Hello, welcome to H3. We're the show all about health, hope, and happiness. I'm Allan Friesen. With me is Scott Sweetman. Brother Scott, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing great despite the cold. I haven't had to venture outside very much today, but I'm very sympathetic. I noticed that the deliveries we received today were far, far less than normal. So I think those who have to be outside are hedging their bets a little bit. But we're supposed to be cold like this for almost a week, eh?
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
Some
Yeah.
polar
For somebody like
vortex.
my bride who works outside feeding them horses, it's tough. So, yeah.
Yeah, I remember those days using a hatchet to cut through cattle waterers for the animals, and
Yeah.
but you got to do it, right? They don't have a choice.
Exactly.
Our Akita went outside today, but the little pug went out to the door, ran about 2 feet in the snow, shook her head, and nope, came running back inside.
Yeah, not for me.
She's like, I want to go play, but maybe not today.
Nice.
Yeah,
so what are we going to talk about tonight, Scott?
Well, tonight's a really interesting topic, and it sort of came out through personal experience and stuff, and doing some research on my own. And they're called medical symptom checkers, online medical symptom checkers. Have you ever come across those or used them? Most people have, actually.
Well, I would isn't it just like asking Google, I got these symptoms? Isn't that what you're talking about?
Well, no, there's actually specialized websites that are designed specifically for medical symptoms and checking them. And they have different levels of accuracy. Let me give you an example here. So
Sure.
I researched the top 5, only one of which I personally know. I usually go to Johns Hopkins or one of those hospitals have their own symptom checkers. But the 5 biggest on the internet right now are ADA, known for its well-designed interface. You have to register to use it. It's the only one you have to register it. And they don't disclose their accuracy. But the thought is because people are registering, their accuracy is fairly decent. The next one is called Buoy Health, BUOY Health.
Okay.
AI-powered chat symptom style. So it's like you're chatting with somebody, it sort of asks you questions back. The accuracy of it is about 52%, website-based. Isabel Healthcare System Checker. And this is one that I've never heard of before, but on the top 5, it's the highest rated for accuracy at 68%. So, but it's very thorough. It's very different from sort of, hey, Google, Google's going to yell at me here in a minute, but saying I have a sore throat and a temperature. What do I have? A lot of questions. It's more thorough than a lot of the other options out there, but that shows the accuracy. 68% is the top. Symptomate is powered by Intermedica, a supplier worldwide, I think, of medical support. Diagnostic accuracy of about 60%, so that puts it in the top 2 or 3 for accuracy. They have a branded and copyrighted logic approach to follow-up questions, and supposedly that really increases its ability. And the last one is the only one I know personally and have ever used, and that's WebMD Symptom Checker.
Oh yeah, and sure.
That's considered the most well-known, probably the most well-known in the world. It's got a body map, which users can use to help identify where problems and symptoms occur, which is unique. Their accuracy is pretty good at about 59%.
59. So you're saying the ones that published accuracy sounds like they range from 59 to 68%. Is that what you just said?
Yeah, these are the biggest ones, the most well-known ones in the world, and the ones not in this list will be lower. So the lowest is 52% and the highest is 68%.
Okay, interesting. And so the process is all you type in your symptoms and then it says this is where it is in my body and this is what I'm experiencing, and then it comes back with its analysis.
Yeah, and it's the thing is that they are becoming more prevalent. And the systems vary. Everyone wants to have their own hook, and there's different ways to go about it. And this sort of came about because right now we're in a worldwide healthcare provider deficit.
Mm-hmm.
And we've been there before,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm a little surprised that we were ever out of it worldwide, right? In developed countries, certainly, but I worldwide. But they're classifying. It's a survey of all governments, the information they provide the World Health Organization. That's where these numbers are coming from. And so the majority of countries worldwide now in 23-24 are reporting health provider deficit, healthcare provider deficit. So that's pretty serious. And countries are looking for alternatives, right?
Yeah.
So, and that's given rise to these online symptom checkers. Governments have got involved conditionally. The risk is high. In the past, symptom checkers were really sort of risk adverse. Like there'd be a lot of, well, regardless of what it says, contact your health provider immediately, and that was an important distinction, is what they called their diagnostic accuracy and their triage accuracy.
Mm-hmm.
And all the sites scored much lower in their diagnostic capability and higher in their triage capability. Which
so
kind of
basically they have like screening questions at the start that try and determine the severity of the person's condition. Yes.
Yes. Yeah, exactly right. And they actually were pretty good. Most sites were pretty good at, with the exception of eye injury. For some reason, eye injury seems to be really difficult for these systems to diagnose. It was quite low in, heart and lung and whatever else we're dealing with. But yeah, the systems were quite good at telling you, get to a doctor or call emergency or whatever. Pretty accurate in those cases. This is coming from over 10,000 studies. And there was like 24 of them that were actually used live patients for diagnosis. So an actual human being would type in what they were feeling, and a doctor or a team of doctors would diagnose them, and then they would compare that to the online diagnosis.
Okay, you think there's a team of doctors, you think it's all just like artificial intelligence now?
Well, yeah. So some of what I was referring to was when the studies were testing the accuracy of these online checkers.
Right.
Right. So but that's a great point, Al. There are a lot of services now where you actually get connected to a real doctor, right? So, and they'll talk to you about your health situation or your condition. But yeah, no, some of these sites that I mentioned, the top 5, 2 of them are AI, the rest of them are database, like static databases where they, like a book you thumb through kind of, and, if this, then this, if this, then that, and, go from there. But when these over 10,000 studies on symptom checkers, there was about 24 of them that actually used live people to check the accuracy. And the rest of them used test cases. So they had, like a scenario that you would maybe learn in med school. If these symptoms are prevalent, age, gender, whatever, then the diagnosis is probably this. That's what most websites use. That's what most of the tests use. But still, 10,000 plus studies with over 24 of those studies using live patients and actual doctors to confirm. Pretty accurate, I think, for something that's quite new.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, that's fairly accurate.
So this, like I said, this is all sort of coming out of both a jump in internet use, right? Everyone, certainly in the developed world and increasingly in the developing world, has access to cell phones or some type of internet connection, more so than they may have to a doctor or a nurse or a healthcare provider. So the projection for use is high. That it's going to become more and more popular, not less popular.
Yeah, makes sense. Well, what do we in our community? 50% of people don't have a doctor, right?
That's right. Yeah, in our community here, that's That's not really first world stats, actually, from what I was pulling up, but it's the reality that a lot of places are facing right now. So
yeah.
Overall, the medical profession and the studies that I looked at pretty much say that generally accuracy is low. So overall, that it averages from 19 to 38%.
Whoa, I thought the numbers were 52 to 68%
in the top
accuracy
5 sites.
in the top 5. Oh,
Yes.
but overall, with all of the symptom checker tools, it's really low. So there's a bunch that are really crap.
Yeah, and that's on their diagnostic ability. They do score better across the board, 49 to 90% for triage.
Hmm.
Right. So there's sort of a lesson here, like you said. There's a lot of crap ones out there, right? Like
Yeah.
you might as well be asking your neighbor what's wrong with you, because when you're like down to, what was it, 30%? I just said.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay, so the
like
top 5 again, it was WebMD was number 5, but then there was ADA. ADA was the one that caused, now is the best one with the
yeah.
highest numbers. Is that
Well, the
right?
best one was Isabel Healthcare.
Isabel Healthcare. Okay.
Yeah,
ADA
symptoms.
was the one that needed the registration type thing.
Registration was, yes, the only one that requires registration, but
Okay.
and they, because of that, it's very hard for them to test it, right? Because then it's an unethical test if they lie about who they are or whatever. So we don't have stats on ADA, but they're extremely popular, which leads the reports to think that they must be in the accuracy range. They're in the top 5 globally. Boy Health, BUOY Health, 52%. Isabel Healthcare, 68%. Symptomate, SYMPTOMAT, 60%. And then WebMD at 59%. So you can see that top 5 is quite a bit higher than the average of all of the checkers. Yeah. And cool. Unfortunately, when I was doing my research, there was a huge number that were actually clickbait. They just connected to other articles, or there was no checker about it. It was straight up simple clickbait, full of advertisement. And another one that I used personally but didn't show up on here as a rating in the study was the Mayo Clinic. They have their own symptom system, the actual Mayo Clinic in the US, which I found pretty okay to use.
You'd think that would have to be rated fairly high, yeah.
Yeah. But again, probably the 5 ones that I listed, that's a global list. So, that's millions of people and what they're using. So,
right.
Yeah. So anyway, we've talked about what they are. We've talked about their accuracy and reliability. Safety and impact on the healthcare system. You've been in the healthcare for a long, long time. How would you see this impacting healthcare as more and more people look to online resources?
Well, I guess I see it just as another resource, right? Another way that somebody who's, and maybe somebody who has mobility issues or doesn't have a car or doesn't have capacity to actually visit a doctor, even if there was a doctor, that they can kind of get some, get some support and get some ideas about what kind of treatment things they might go from there, right? I mean, if you're calling Alberta Health on, what is it, 811 is that number, right? If you call Alberta Health, their accuracy, I don't know what their accuracy is, but they certainly are very quick to tell, to say, go to emerge, right? So, yeah.
Well, and that's how I've sort of found it useful, is when I look at them, I research the possibilities. So when I go to the doctor and they ask questions, I have some idea where they're heading to, right? Like, and that gives me a better sense of. We had a situation with a real doctor in Japan, and Sabrina had a condition, and it's called osteo. Anyway, it happens in young kids, and the cap on their bone doesn't stop the bone from growing, so they'll get like a little bone spur. Sabrina had one on her shoulder, and most times they're completely benign. they stop on their own. They can be removed. Sometimes they go away. The body absorbs that extra calcium deposit that was in the bone. So being identical twins, Sabrina suddenly developed this bump on her shoulder collarbone, and Katrina had no bump. So we were a little bit worried about this. In a foreign country, couldn't sometimes communicate with a doctor so well. So we turned to a symptom checker and did a lot of research. And they said, usually the cases of being cancer are extremely low, especially in children. If you're older and you suddenly develop a bone spur, then that's a different situation. But with young, like babies, 1 year old, that often it's this osteochondritis. Maybe that's what it's called. Anyway,
osteo, not osteo.
Oh, right. So
osteo is
osteo.
bone.
Yeah. Right. Anyway, so we were sort of prepared for that. We went in. Their usual doctor, who was educated in Japan and California, who spoke English extremely well, was busy, and so an intern saw us, and he examined Katrina, and then he said in Japanese, "I'm very sorry, but this could be cancer."
Mm-hmm.
And just at that point, we had done enough research that we didn't flip out. We were like, well, but that seems contrary to the statistics.
Yeah.
Like what why do you think it's cancer? You haven't done an X-ray yet. Well, they did an X-ray, but they hadn't done a bone sample and things like that. And then his boss came in and heard him repeat that it was gun, which is the Japanese word for cancer, and flipped out. Like, his boss undressed him right there and said, what are you, stupid? Like, that's the last thing you tell parents. And only once you absolutely know that that's the condition, right? You don't lead with that to new parents. And of course, it was fine. And it was just this bone thing. And her body actually absorbed it. So she doesn't have it anymore.
So Katrina was like 9 months old kind of thing, or how old?
Yeah, Sabrina, 9 months to a year old. She was she wasn't talking yet or anything.
Yeah.
But it was scary. But my point is, had we not prepared ourselves for him saying that it's probably cancer, would have changed our ability to handle the situation greatly.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Cool. Okay. Excellent.
So I have seen, even if they're not incredibly accurate, I do think they have some advantages to preparing people, and like you said, chasing you to emergency, not just saying, I'm fine, and passing away in sleep because you didn't go to emergency.
Can I share a non-symptom checker story with you now?
Absolutely. This is H3, man. This is Story Sharon Central.
All right. Do you remember? Well, you might even have heard this story before. I had orthopedic, is that the right word? Orthoscopic is the word. Knee surgery on my one knee, which actually in retrospect was a waste of time. But anyways, I had it. And then while I was having it, he noticed on my other leg, this funny bump kind of a thing. Right. And it was on my shin bone. And it was not really painful, but a little bit, a little bit uncomfortable. And so then he says, "Oh, we want to look at this." I said, "Oh, okay." And so, so they go and he calls in his intern. "Hey, come here, check this out." Right. So, that's not exactly a good sign when you're the patient. Like, this is a learning opportunity. Okay. But anyways, it was osteomyelitis, which is an infection in the bone, often caused where you've had like a break or a hard fracture, and it didn't heal correctly, right? So it's an infection that's in the bone. And so they diagnosed that was the problem. And then the treatment for it was either to get hospitalized and have a IV antibiotic for like 3 weeks or something, or to take like I forget, it was like 10 big ass antibiotic pills every day, and do that for 6 months. Right.
Whoa.
So I chose the 6 months. I'll take the things. Right. And so I didn't want to come back, obviously. Right. I wanted to solve this problem. So they said, well, for this to work, you can't drink alcohol. said, oh, okay. So I didn't drink alcohol for 6 months, right? And then
Yeah.
after not drinking alcohol for 6 months, it's like, wow, I feel better. I got better energy. I'm thinking better. I'm like, so it's kind of one of those things, in retrospect, this might have happened for me, right? To kind of get my behavior into a little bit better place for my longevity overall, right? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's fantastic. And I think it is kind of related to our topic because, what comes out of all of this is that it's important that you get checked, right?
Yeah,
Like,
true.
yes, we're short doctors and it's a pain in the neck to get an appointment and get in, but it's really important that we do go to the doctor and get, looked over. And
Mhm.
self-diagnosis, I guess, is what I'm saying. Self-diagnosis, unless you happen to be a doctor, and even then you're not supposed to diagnose yourself for obvious reasons, isn't the best plan, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
we've got a lot of pills. So do you have any problems with that now, or is it like
No.
completely gone after all the horse pills?
Yeah, it's all good. And the non-drinking thing, besides my recent trip to Mexico, was I was like 12 years, no alcohol at all. Then I went to Mexico and somehow mezcal was not alcohol to me. So I drank a whack of mezcal. But now that I'm back in Canada, I'm not drinking again. So yeah.
What's mezcal like? I've never tasted it.
Yeah, it's basic. It's quite a process. Basically, they take these cactuses, these different type of cactuses,
Yeah.
and they heat them to make them soft, and then they mash them with this big like wooden mallet to kind of get them, and then they put them in the distiller, and then that's where they get the mezcal from. And so like tequila is just kind of like one variant of mezcal. Mezcal, if I understand correctly, is like the mother of them all, and
Right.
then tequila is just one version of it, sort of thing. So. Yeah,
Yeah.
but it tastes nice. It's got a distinctive flavor, but it's not super powerful. But it'll, you feel it when you taste it. So yeah,
High alcohol content?
yes, how high alcohol content, yes. And
That'd be hard
I
after
think it's
12
more
years.
like it seems to work in my body, and I think a lot of people's bodies more like a drug than alcohol.
Mm,
Yeah,
yeah.
is my experience. So
I've heard that. And I was going to ask you, is it considered a drug or alcohol? Because I have heard people who've gone to Mexico and said, oh, yeah, it's like, a drug. The experience is not like, alcohol. But I'm
yeah,
like you. I got sick and I haven't had a drink in 14 years now? Nothing, not like zero, because
yeah,
it interacts with my medicine, right? So,
yeah. Well,
yeah.
in retrospect, I think I was allergic to alcohol.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
when I good look back, like my complexion was all blotchy and everything, and I
Mm.
would get like really red around my neck when I drank any alcohol. So I think I was probably had some form of allergy to it. So yeah.
In Asia, and I think that it's also true with our indigenous population here, every year when they call their new hire season, when new people come onto the company, so kids, right, they're like 18, going out with the company and getting just crazy drunk is part of the sort of hazing ritual.
Mm,
But Japanese people have a gene, some of them, missing that allows them to properly process alcohol. So it's straight
mm,
up poison. Like alcohol is a poison. It's a minor
sure.
poison that we imbibe on purpose. But most of us have an enzyme that helps break it down and make it less poison for us. But some people, traditionally people from that sort of Northern Asian. I got to be careful here because it's not so geographic, but it's genetic. And then I also heard that some of our natives in Canada are also missing that gene, and
Mm,
it's deadly. Every year during new hire season, the news, you hear about these young people who died before they could get them to emergency, and 2 drinks and they're suddenly in shock, and that's it. It's not like they pounded a 40 pounder or whatever. It's like
yeah.
2 drinks of hard alcohol, and that's it. They're in anaphylactic shock and they can't be recovered. So
Wow. Wow.
serious stuff. Yeah,
Tragic,
no.
tragic situation, right? And so
Yeah,
yeah. Mm,
we should look into it. I should do some research on what I know. When we were growing up, that drinking was a large part of growing up, right? Like it was.
you grew up in a rural community, as did I, and
Yeah.
that was that was
Recreation, curling, cribbage, hearts in my area playing cards or drinking or doing a combination of all of those things. That was it, pretty much.
And I'm a little ashamed to say also drinking and driving. That made it all the more enjoyable, right? Which was like obviously very reckless and irresponsible. But yeah.
We were not lucky, but a tragedy occurred in our community. 5 young girls were killed graduation night because of a drunk driver.
Wow.
They weren't drunk, but a driver who had been at another graduation party came over the top of a hill on the wrong side and hit them head on. Of course, he lived. All 5 of them died.
Yeah.
And I was dating the younger sister of one of the girls. I mean, dating, it was high school, so it's not hardly considered dating by today's terms, but I think we'd held hands and gone to a couple of dances. But anyway, it was so traumatic that our community, after that, years ahead of when it was popular, went to safe graduations and all of those things, because
nice.
In a small community like ours, losing 5 young women was like
huge. Yeah.
Traumatic.
What a loss to that community. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. And all kids, everyone, in a small community like that, everyone pretty much knows everyone, and the parents all went to school together and the kids all go to school together.
And the victims, it was really tough, obviously, to have those young lives snuffed out. But even the guy, because it was a guy who was driving the drunk, right? Even him, how is his life afterwards, right? Like that'd be forever the guilt you'd have to deal with, that you would cause the loss of those lives, right? It'd be horrible as well. So
yeah, I did hear, and I'm not 100% sure, but I know that he was hospitalized, and he did end up passing away. And I don't know if it was from the accident or there's, the rumor mill is that he took his own life because he couldn't deal with it. But he didn't live much past the accident. Survived the accident. Yeah, I know. Terribly, terribly serious. But the good thing about it, I think, is that young people seem to be much more aware than we were of how it has lifelong effects, not just hangover.
In many respects, like, I mean, some people will, talk negatively about, kids these days, but man, a lot of them are way more responsible in regards to that, for sure. Like way more responsible than I or you were probably. And, that's a good sign of maturity, that they kind of have thought that through. So that's awesome. Well, okay. Do we have more to go on the web symptom checker thing, or is there more to that topic? Or
I was just bringing us back to that, Al.
Okay, good. All right. Very bad. Yes, let's get back.
I was wrangling the fleeing cats of our storyline back on track. And I was going to say that, seriously, that I think young people today, because of tools like the symptom checker, have a lot more information. Like when I grew up, it was like your parents, aunts, uncles, and your friends. That was it. That was your source of information, right?
Right.
Like, we had 2
channels. You grew up, there was no internet, right?
When I was young, I was actually I was the person who sold the first portable computers to Canada's space program, if you can believe that. Telsat Canada bought their first mobile computers. They had 64K memory from me. So yeah.
Like what, 1977?
Yeah, I was 66. So I went to college at 16. Yeah, you're pretty close, man. Pretty close. Yeah. Pretty good guess. But yeah, no, I've been on the internet since there was none. But I do think, like, your daughter, my kids, their friends have a whole bunch more information. A lot of it bad, but a lot more tools to make decisions. Like teenage pregnancy. When I was a kid, boy, the outcome of that really depended on the religion of your parents. Right? If you were Catholic, then you ended up having the child and either putting up for adoption or living with it. If you were certain types of Protestant, then you may get a medical abortion or, go an illegal route. I think it was illegal when I was quite young, but I'm not sure about that. Don't flame me. Anyway, the point is now young people who find themselves in a bad situation can get a hold of mental health. They can get a hold of medical support, and they don't have to go through their parents or grandparents and face that shame.
It's true.
not that shame isn't a good thing in small doses and in appropriate ways, like feeling remorse is okay, I think, to a point. But certainly having more information from professionals or the ability to connect to health professionals has to be a plus to young people of this time.
Okay, I want to clarify your comment, or I want to ask you about your comment. You said shame in little doses is okay, kind of a thing, or acceptable. But is not shame is saying I am a bad person. I am not lovable. Guilt is saying I did a bad thing. I can feel remorse about doing a bad thing, but shame is, I don't think, ever a good thing, because shame is basically attributing, saying I'm a bad person. I'm not lovable, or I'm not whatever. I'm lacking in some way of being a full and complete human being, right?
And I agree, but let me just preface why I made that statement, because
Okay.
it's interesting. So as you said, I've been in computers for an incredibly long time, and I got to work with, at the time, Canada's top hunter of online pedophiles.
Okay.
He was an RCMP officer. He was in their special identification. He was in Southern Alberta for some reason. I was in security and technology at the time. He needed something. We ended up going on a long drive together to go pick up something from the border. I can't remember what it was he was picking up, but I was from here. My boss at the time when I was in security was ex-RCMP. So he reached out when he was here, blah, 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 blah. Anyway, so we had this long drive ahead of us, and we didn't really know each other, but we were talking. And people who deal with, child pornography, that kind of pedophilia, they are a special kind of people, right? Like they're people in law enforcement. I had a cousin who was out on the coast as an RCMP undercover officer, and he quit because of that. He broke up an underage prostitution ring, and he just resigned. As soon as it was done in court, he's like, I'm out of here. I'm moving back to Bentley. I can't, I don't ever want to see this again. So, but, the fellow that I was talking to, he made a career out of it. He was about ready to retire. And we got talking about rehabilitation, because that's always interested me, right? Like, can you rehabilitate somebody? Like stealing a candy bar, most of us, time for confession, have pocketed a candy bar or something when we're young, right? I have. Am I a thief today? No, not at all. I avoid getting in any kind of legal trouble because it's too stressful. But so we were talking about rehabilitation, and he brought up his field, and I mean, I already knew that, but he was talking about how when he worked in the northern communities as a regular police officer and Indigenous communities, that when they did something wrong against the community, they would have to come to the community and admit to everyone what they had done. Say it out loud. And there was a moment of shame that person felt. And then there was a moment when everyone forgave them.
Okay. So basically saying the shame was kind of necessary for the person who had done the horrendous act to be able to have that experience in order for them to be redeemed, kind of a thing.
Well, in his opinion, and I just still defer to his opinion, because he had, 40 years of dealing with like some of the most severe criminals and twisted mentalities on the planet, right? Or Alberta or Canada, pardon me. But he said that in all of the systems, like he didn't think jail was a rehabilitation situation at all.
No.
He said they just learn more and either get back out and reoffend, generally, like a huge percentage. Not that back then, it probably wasn't as high as it was now. But when he was in these northern communities, he had witnessed the value of a little bit of shame. And I was younger then, and I, like you, I thought, oh, shame's bad, right? You're saying that I'm evil, I'm irredeemable. But he really felt that, the fact that you admit it in front of the community, and the community never forgets, right? They forgive you, but they never forget. And that idea that they know what you've done, but they still accept you. You're still welcome at, community events. You're still welcome at the, the parties and those types of things, that person could feel that they had in fact rehabilitated. So it allowed that person to feel like they had gone through. Sorry, man. Wow. So I'm not arguing at all.
No, no.
And I think that shame is generally a negative attitude. But I was presented with that story when it was sort of a formative period when I was thinking about, good, evil, the mistakes we make, how we become better people, all of that stuff. And this gentleman had experienced a lot of stuff that I had never experienced. And that was his opinion. His opinion was that a little bit of shame is a way for people to rehabilitate, to feel that. So I don't know. Anyway.
No, I appreciate that. I think that makes that I can understand the context and how that makes sense. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Cool.
So I agree with you. I don't think carrying around shame is good for you. And
right.
His example was sort of the idea that you got the shame out, right? Like, because you feel shame when you do bad things. We all do, especially if you do them on purpose. Most people then feel guilty, right? Like if you do something knowingly wrong, at least I do. When I do something knowingly wrong, I kind of feel bad about it, right? And I wish that I had done it.
But that's like you feel guilt. You don't like it's not shame, right?
Yeah. Well, I don't know, because for a lot of people, it's
okay. So maybe according to him, you need the shame to want to change. Just
or feel like you've gone through some transformative process. I think. Okay. I co-wrote an article on Pressusong Church in Manitoba, beautiful Catholic church, and I helped interpret the symbolism in that church. They published the article in the Journal of North American Religion, and I had a great talk with the priest there. And in his church, in Pressusong Church, the confessionals, at least when this priest was there, they didn't use them. He encouraged his community to confess openly in front of the congregation. And he felt in a similar way that by doing that, it was sort of a painful process that the sinner or the person doing confession could feel like they had atoned for what they had done.
Okay.
So I don't know. Those are just two experiences with two people that are sort of in the business of rehabilitation that have said a little shame can be a good thing. So that's where it came from. Yeah.
Well, Thank you for that. I kind of got us off track again. Back to the symptom checker episode. What are we talking about now?
Yeah. So the symptom checker is, the bottom line is, it's a developing resource.
Yes.
Right? Use it, but realize, even if you're on the biggest 5 in the world, you're only really talking 60%. But that 60% can give you some good information. And they're much better at saying, yeah, you need to go see a health professional. So if you think something's wrong and you really need someone else to tell you there's something wrong, hint, hint, if you think there's something wrong, just go to a doctor. But if you really need something else to tell you, yes, you're not being a wimp, you're not being paranoid.
Or as you did, you used it pre-doctor, and then you were less, you freaked out less with the cancer diagnosis that the Japanese doctor gave, right? So it could be where it's a pre-tool before you get to the doctor, right? So, yeah.
Well, just recently, like I had some lumps in my stomach. The doctor was a little concerned. So I thought, okay, while they were setting up the test. So I Googled it, right? I want a symptom checker. And they said, yeah, can be cancer, can be this, can be that, can be this. I said, okay, worst thing to deal with would be cancer. Went on the website, the cancer website, Cancer Canada, I forget what it's called. And there was some great advice on there. And the advice was, if you've just been diagnosed with cancer, relax, breathe a bit, give yourself time to adjust to it, and, make a decision. What are you going to do with the time you have, however long it is? Sort of hint, you should do this every day anyway. Yeah. And it was a really good preparatory tool in case it turned out not to be cancer, just scar tissue or some other kind of lump. But still, like you said, the tools allowed me to prepare. Had it been the worst, it wouldn't have been a huge shock to me. And I would sort of know, well, okay, this is how I need to move forward right now.
So our message is symptom checkers are good. Use them with discernment.
Oh, perfectly said, brother. Perfectly. Yeah. User beware, but they're not junk. If they're giving you a bunch of ads for weight loss programs, hair color, or pornography, probably they're clickbait. But if they're one of the reliable ones, and it's easy to search the reliable ones, yeah, they have some value, no question.
Cool. Have we completed our mission here today?
We've gone a little overboard. We've talked, we wandered afar. But
okay.
One of my favorite quotes, not all those who wander are lost. So
Good
from
one.
my brother, Allan Friesen, the acapellist, who wanders but is never lost, and myself, Scott Sweetman, thank you for visiting H3, and we'll see you next week, same time, same place.
Yes, exactly. Get him, Matson. Keep yourself well.